Once again he was dazzled by its beauty. It was definitely a keeper, he thought. It was the first thing that he'd ever stolen, but he knew that it would be the last. He had nowhere to go but home, and that was something that he wasn't looking forward to. There was one thing that he was pleased with. His arms and back had stopped aching. He was thankful for small mercies. The last thing he wanted was more punishment from his dad, and the thought made him shudder. He hoped that when he got home, Dad would be sleeping, and he could creep up to the safety of his bed. Little did he know that his dad had managed to stagger home, and he was now woken from his slumber. He was hungry, very hungry. He looked in the freezer for something filling, and he found a large pizza to feed a family of 4. That will do, he said, and he threw it in the oven without a care, and then he turned on the heat. He sat back in the comfy armchair, and he quickly fell asleep. It was the last mistake he made. After an hour, the creaky old oven door flew open, sending sparks from the extremely charred pizza onto the paper-strewn carpet. Tinker turned the corner, and he was shocked to see a fire engine outside his house and a crowd of onlookers. Smoke was puttering out of the windows, and then he saw an ambulance, and then a man was being carried out on a stretcher. It was hard for him to take it all in. It was surreal, he thought. He ran over to the man on the stretcher, and he knew that it was his dad. The smoke stung his eyes. It was thick in his throat like poison. A wave of conflicting emotions swept over him: fear, pain, shock, and even relief. The firemen and ambulance men noticed the shock on his face, and they helped him into the ambulance, and in an instant they were speeding through the dark streets. Tinker glanced at his dad, who was covered with a mask over his face, and the beep beep of the machines made it seem like a surreal kind of game, but it wasn't. Tinker wiped at his smoke-stung eyes, and he knew that it was all too real. He sat in the waiting room, and he had never felt so lonely or scared. He was scared for his dad and for himself. He watched as the doctors and nurses ran up and down the corridor in an endless stream, and he was pleased that he wasn't in their shoes. Hello, viewers. He tried to conjure up happy memories, but he could hardly think of any. It made him feel sad and guilty. Tinker blew on his too hot and too black tea, and then he was amazed to see Charlie walking down the corridor with his mum. They both looked very serious, thought Tinker, before he fainted. Chapter 77, Death Knell. Charlie had realized that he'd stayed at Bob's too long, and he looked outside at the darkening sky, and he made his excuses to leave. He was sure that the golfers would have gone home by now. He waved goodbye to Bob, and he nervously made his way around the deserted golf course. 128. Going to page 136. What the hell? Oh my God. It was paradise to me, he added, and here I stay. Oh my God. It was paradise to me, he said, and here I stay. Anyone want a biscuit? And he said, rummaging in his full cupboards. How'd you buy all these tins and biscuits without money? Said Tinker noisily and suspiciously. I bet, said Bob. Bet, said Tinker. What do you bet on? He asked. Norses, said Bob. What's a Norse? Said Tinker, screwing up his face. Not Norses, said Bob, laughing. Horses. I love me horses, and that's how I make me money. I bet on 'em, he said, smiling with pride. Now that they had both heard of horses and betting, but they had no idea how to win money at all, at it. How do you know if you're going to win? Said Tinker curiously. I study, said Bob. Study, said Charlie, like at a school. He was confused. He knew that Bob was too old to go to school. Bob grinned. He was amused. I study my books, he said, and he pointed to all of the books on his wonky bookshelf. They're not stories, he said. They show form. Form? What's that? Said Tinker, showing interest. It tells you how a horse has performed over the seasons, he added, as he picked up a leaflet and flicked through it. Charlie looked at him, and he could see his face change, and the wrinkles and his scowl disappeared. A twinkle returned to his eye, and a peachy rush of colour returned to his cheeks. He was like a little boy again. Bob was reborn. Bob told them how he studied the books morning, noon, and night, and of how he had learnt to spot a winner, a special pattern. As soon as he won the first bet, he squirreled the money away, and then he put the money onto the next, and the next, and the next. They all won. Bob was careful and meticulous, and he began to be an expert at predicting results. It changed his life. Hope you like that, viewers. I'll read some more in a minute. Please sub me if you liked it.